Hey guys, how's it going? I have a really nice video to make today. Normally I don't talk about the Genesys format because I think that format's actually really terrible. I have been a #1 Genesys hater since the beginning of the format. I know everyone was talking about how great of a format it was and how this is going to be the best Yu-Gi-Oh format ever. Now when you fast forward around 2 months, everyone says how bad it is. A lot of people buy into hype cycles and talk about how great a format is before they even get a chance to play it for a while. I'm personally of the opinion that you have to play something for at least 2 or 3 months before you can say that. I personally never been a person who falls into hype cycles. Every time a new game or a new format gets announced, people get really excited, and on day one they say it's the best thing ever. For someone like me, that never happens. You can't deceive me into thinking something's good before I even get a chance to play it. Another reason why people thought this format was going to be so good is because Konami's so nice and they're making a format for the older players, but that really wasn't even a thing either. The reason why they made this format is because they have some other archetypes coming in the TCG that are far too weak for the TCG format. Cards like Radiant Typhoon are strong cards, but they're not strong enough to play in the TCG, but they can be played in Genesys. This is why Konami made this format. You're not going to care about Radiant Typhoon in the TCG because they're far too weak, but you will care about them in Genesys. Pretty much this format was just designed for them to sell more cards and products. This is why I've always been a massive Genesys hater ever since the start. There is no way you can convince me that Junk Speeder is a more broken card than Rongo. Before this update, Junk Speeder was 100 points and Rongo was only 31 points. That makes no logical sense to any person here. On top of that, Rongo is an insanely broken card. The card is essentially an FDK because when you get all the materials, your opponent can't summon any monsters and it's also unaffected by card effects. It literally makes no sense why a card like Rongo would not get higher points, but Konami really likes Xyz in this format. Yuma's archetype, like the Dododo Gagaga cards, got a bunch of support and they were really strong. This has always been my biggest gripe with Genesys. It was just made for them to make money. However, we do have a Genesys update today and this is an actual good list. I have no idea what changed in Konami because their Genesys update list was always so bad. They have some actual good changes here. Now I'm not going to go over all of them here just because it's kind of pointless, but I will talk about the most impactful ones. First of all, DROLL and Lockbird goes from 5 to 25 points. This is such a good change. DROLL and Lockbird is such an annoying card. Pretty much in Draco Tail, the only card that you can droll is either Keto or Lucas. After you droll one of them, then they don't really care. They're just gonna keep fusion summoning and then they set their cards from the deck. They don't actually add them to their hand. This is why DROLL is terrible against that deck. However, DROLL and Lockbird against pretty much any other deck is just insane. It pretty much ends their turn. Almost every rogue deck cannot play through DROLL just because they search too many times. This is a really good change and I hope something like this happens in the TCG. I personally have never been a fan of a Lingering Floodgate. I think those cards are just so stupid. This is a really good change, but I kinda think that Konami should have done this from the start. I have no idea why they thought DROLL and Lockbird was only worth 5 points. One of the best hand traps in the game that are completely generic, only 5 points at launch? You're kidding. I feel like they should have done this from the start, but some change is always better than no change, and better late than never. I think this is a really good change from Konami, and I hope they do more of this in the future. For the Draco Tail hits, you have Famina, Ketu, and Flame. None of these really surprise me. Famina is a really good card that lets you play on turn 0. Pretty much you just make Arthaline on the opponent's turn, and then you get to bounce back a bunch of their monsters. Ketu's also a pretty decent hit. This card is just a rota for the archetype that can also help you fusion summon. Radiant Typhoon also have a bunch of really big hits. They have Chant, Elidam, and Totem Bird hit up. Chant is now 10 points, Elidam is 7, and Totem Bird is 10. This is gonna hurt them a lot because Chant and Elidam are their searcher cards. This deck is definitely not gonna be one of the top decks anymore. It's still gonna be playable in some sense, but now they have a really big issue. The reason why Radiant Typhoon was so strong was not because their cards were so powerful. They were pretty good in the Genesys format, but they were pretty much untouched, which is why they were so strong. They have so many rotas, so many starters, and so many extenders that just had no points. Now they can't afford to play a lot of high point non-engine cards because now their engine is going to cost too many points. Now the next part is really important. This is going to be hits to the new archetypes. This is going to be the new archetypes on Phantom Revengers and the preemptive hits. I know a lot of people will probably be really surprised, but Konami did say they were going to do this. When they didn't hit decks like Vanquish Soul or Radiant Typhoon very early, a lot of people were pretty upset. Now like I said, it made a bunch of sense to me because the whole point of the Genesys format is to sell the other cards they can't sell in the TCG. However, I know a lot of people were pretty upset because what's the point of even doing this? Radiant Typhoon is by far way too strong for the Genesys format because the cards are just way too high in power level. However, from Konami's business perspective, they don't want to hit the cards too early because then you're not going to buy them. If they give a bunch of points to Radiant Typhoon, you're not going to buy the card in Doom of Dimension. That's the whole point of Genesys. They're going to make another format where these cards are really strong, so you're going to buy them and play the deck. Gygas is going to go from 0 to 5 points, and then Xenos is going to go from 0 to 10 points. Now for Cool Tune, you're going to have Clip go to 5 points, and then you're going to have Q go to 5 points. So now for Cool Tune, this isn't too bad, even though preemptive hits always suck. However, for Hecka Hands though, this is actually pretty bad. The reason why is that Phantom Beast Chimera is pretty decent to run with Hecka Hands. The issue is that Chimera already got hit really bad on the early Genesys when it first came out. Cornfield Coder is a really important card because that card is the searcher for the archetype. That card will add any monster from your deck to your hand that mentions Chimera Fusion. That's really important because this card will add cards like Mirror Swordsman to your hand. That card is the Lone Fire Blossom for the archetype. You get to summon that card and then you summon Berthomet. Berthomet's effect will activate, that will let you add Chimera Fusion and Gazelle from your deck to your hand. Cornfield Coder is 33 points, which is really expensive. Gigaius is also one of the most important monsters for the archetype. Now this could definitely be a lot worse because they could have hit the other Hekahand cards like Yaddle or Ibble. If you don't know, Hekahand's Yaddle is the one where you reveal the card in your hand and then you shuffle it into the deck. Then you get to add a Hekahand spell or trap from your deck to your hand. That's pretty nice because Hekahands do have a double searcher for the archetype. There's a spell card called Hekahands. What that card does is you get to activate this card by sending one other card you control to the grave. That card will let you take a Hekahands monster from your deck and add the card to your hand. Then if you sent a card to the grave to activate this card, then you also get to set a Hekahand spell or trap from your deck. Now Ibble does the exact same thing, except for adding a spell or trap from your deck to your hand, it summons a monster from the deck. So they didn't hit the Searcher or the E-Telly, but Gygas is still a pretty bad hit. Out of the Hekahand monsters that take a card that your opponent has and summon it to your field, I would say for sure Gygas and Bruce were definitely the best ones. Now just in case you don't know what the Hekahand cards do, Bruce is the one that summons itself to your field. Then you get to target a card in your opponent's hand, and if it's a monster you summon it to your field. Gygas is the one when it's summoned you get to excavate the top 3 cards out of your opponent's deck. Then if one of them's a monster you summon that card to your field. So it's pretty clear to see that Gygas was the best one. That's pretty bad for Hekahands because like I said, Cornfield Coder is already 33 points. On top of that, now Xenos is 10 points, which is really bad. If you don't know what Xenos is, that's a really good boss monster for the archetype. That card will let you pick 2 random cards in your opponent's extra deck and summon one of them to your field. Now I definitely agree that extra deck rips are really lame, but this essentially kills Hekahands. You probably won't play more than one Xenos now, so it's really gonna hurt. Like at this point with Gygas and then you have Cornfield Coder and then you have Xenos hit, that's just a lot of really big points and you haven't even gone to non-engine yet. I think this deck is really gonna struggle. And now we get to Cool Tune. This is the deck that I cared about the most because I like them a lot. If you guys don't know, I love the Synchro archetypes. I like pretty much all of them. I was actually really excited to play Cool Tune in Genesys just because like I said I like Synchro, but the archetype is also really cool. The deck is really consistent and they have a lot of 1-card combos. I thought the deck was going to be pretty good in Genesys and it looks like Konami thought the same thing as well. There's so many 1-card combos or 1.5-card combos that end you with either 4 or 5 interruptions on the opponent's turn. That's really good for Genesys standards. On top of that, the archetype also has turn 0 plays with Clip. If you don't know what that card does, that's the tuner monster that summons itself from the hand on the opponent's turn. It will also let you perform the Synchro Summon for a tuner monster. Like I said, the card was very strong and it gave Cool Tune a turn 0 play. The card is also an extra deck rip when it's sent to the grave as Synchro material, so it makes sense why Konami would try to hit it early. Now Q to 5 points was definitely the one I expected the most, but still pretty rough. If you aren't aware and you don't play Cool Tune, they have 4 main deck monsters. They have Q, Clip, Rico, and Mix. Without a doubt the best one is Q. That card is so good. When that card is normal summoned, you get to summon any tuner monster from your hand, deck, or grave. Now after you use this effect, you can't summon anything until the end of the turn except for tuner monsters. However, that's totally fine because Q as a card is just way too powerful. Also, when Cool Tune Q is sent to the grave as Synchro material, you get to look at the top 2 cards on your opponent's deck. You get to banish one and place the other one on the top or the bottom of the deck. That's also really strong because if your opponent has 2 good cards on the top of their deck, you just banish one of them and put the other one on the bottom. Or if your opponent has a really bad card, you can place it on the top of the deck to give them a dead draw. Cool Tune Q was definitely the best starter in Cool Tune, so it doesn't surprise me that Konami hit the card early. However, this is definitely going to hurt Cool Tune a lot. On top of that, I had a Cool Tune guide that I had ready and I was going to upload. However, right before, Konami made a blog post saying that they're going to hit Cool Tune. So basically, that entire video I'm going to have to re-record, which sucks. However, I'll just do that on my own time and hopefully sometime this week I'll be able to upload that guide. However, there's also going to be new Predaplant cards getting revealed in Blazing Dominion, so I might hold off on that. It really just depends how much time I have. However, I still think Cool Tune's going to be decent in Genesys, but it's not going to be as good as it was earlier. However, I'll still try to get up that Cool Tune guide as soon as possible for you guys. This is definitely going to hurt Cool Tune a lot because all the main deck monsters, you always play 3 of them. This is because Cool Tune don't have that many main deck monsters to begin with. So if you want to play 3 Clip and 3 Q, you're going to have to spend 30 points, which is actually a lot. I'm definitely going to have to do more testing in Genesys to see what the correct ratios are now. This is definitely going to be a substantial hit for them. Now the other changes that I really like is definitely the Automata Xyz archetype. They hit the Dododo Warrior and made it 70 points, which I think is a really good thing. They also hit Gaga Gaga Girl, but I really don't think that one was too necessary. Rongo goes from 31 points to 68. I honestly don't understand why Konami just doesn't make that one 100 points. Like, does anybody actually like this card in the format and think it's a healthy addition? It just feels like there's a lot of Xyz bias in this format. The Rongo hit is definitely good though, but this card should just be 100 points. I really don't think anyone would miss that card if they did make it 100 points. So anyways, that's it for me guys. Now from someone who really hates Genesys, I'm a really big Genesys hater, this was a really good list. I still think the Genesys format is really bad, and if Konami wants to make it better, they're gonna have to do more updates like these. I understand that they want to make money, but if a really strong archetype comes out and it's playable in Genesys, they're gonna have to hit them early. So even though I really like Cool Tune, I'm actually okay with them hitting them early. They're just gonna have to commit to this and do this for every archetype that comes out in the future. They're gonna have to do what's better for the format instead of what makes them more money. I don't think they're gonna do that, but they're gonna have to try. It's gonna be pretty difficult for them because Konami is a business. The goal of every business by the end of the day is to make as much money as possible. Anyways, that's for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good one. Take care.